It makes no financial sense to skimp on salary to save $100,000 a year when hiring a second best candidate may cost you millions in lost profit. The cost of hiring the wrong person is not just their salary, it's the opportunity cost of not having the right person. It's the deals that don't close, the product that ships late or doesn't ship at all. It's the culture that degrades. It all compounds on itself. The worst part of it is that bad hires don't just underperform, they lower the bar for everyone else. It ruins your talent density that you've been building up there.
Initiating becoming a hiring machine sequence in 3, 2, 1.
Men wanted for hazardous journey. Small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger. Safe return doubtful, honor and recognition in case of success. That's not a job posting you'd see on LinkedIn today, right? But Ernest Shackleton used it to recruit his crew for one of history's most dangerous expeditions to Antarctica. And here's the crazy thing about that. He got over 5,000 applications. 5,000 people who saw that and were just like, yeah, that's me. Sign me up for probable death in the freezing cold. The thing is, this worked because Shackleton wasn't just filling a role. He was finding people who wanted to be part of something extraordinary. He was honest about what it would take, and the right people lined up for it. We've lost that today, and it's costing companies everything. I'm Sam Keenly. Welcome back to Becoming a Hiring Machine. Let's talk today about the one thing that every legendary founder, company owner, executive has understood, but we've somehow forgotten along the way. So here's what's happening. Over the past couple years, I've been listening to the Founders Podcast. It's David Senra's show where he reads biographies of the world's most successful entrepreneurs, and you guessed it, founders. And I started noticing a pattern. And it wasn't a subtle pattern. It was a smack you in the face. How did I miss this pattern? So every single founder that he's covered, from Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett, Sarah Blakely, Elon Musk, David Ogilvy, you name it, all of them, they all said nearly the same thing about one singular topic, and it wasn't product market fit. It wasn't about how do you get more capital. It wasn't about sales, anything like that. It was all about recruiting and hiring. So Steve Jobs had this observation, and it didn't even reframe how I think about talent. It solidified how I think about it. And so what he said was, I think I've consistently figured out who the really smart people were to hang around with. You must find extraordinary people. The key observation is that in most things in life, the dynamic range between average quality and the best quality is at most 2 to 1. But in the field I was interested in, I noticed that the dynamic range between what an average person could accomplish and what the best person could accomplish was 50 or 100 to 1. So given that, you're well advised to go after the cream of the cream. So think about what he's saying there. In most things, like buying a blender, going to a restaurant, you name it, the difference between average and great is maybe 2 to 1. Like a good burger at a good restaurant versus a good burger at a great restaurant, again, like 2 to 1. I don't know. But knowledge work, building companies, the difference between an average software engineer, marketer, sales rep, you go list, pick your role. But it's not 2 to 1. It's 50 to 1. It could be 100 to 1. One exceptional person can do the work of 50 average people, and they'll do it better. So if that's true, which I definitely think it is, why would we settle for average? Why would we ever think that good enough is actually good enough? And Jobs was absolutely ruthless about this. He said, I only want A players on my team. A players, hire A players. B players, hire C players. And then he went on, even in the same train of thought, where he basically said, a small team of A+ players can run circles around a giant team of B and C players. I know you've all seen this. Like, you've seen a massive team, some big company, unlimited resources. They somehow move slower and a lower quality bar than a tiny startup that has 5 people. It has nothing to do with headcount. It has everything to do with who the heads in those companies are. And Jobs wasn't just saying this stuff as platitudes. He personally interviewed over 5,000 candidates at Apple. 5,000 individual conversations. Just think about that for a second. That volume is wild. He didn't delegate it to HR. He wasn't just doing the typical founder, like, yeah, I'll talk to them at the end once you've more or less made your decision to give you the thumbs up. But he was doing the work himself because he knew that nothing mattered more. Jeff Bezos was the same exact way. He said that something that should be plastered on every CEO's wall. He said, setting the bar high in our approach to hiring has been and will continue to be the single most important element of Amazon's success. It wasn't their logistics. It wasn't their tech. It wasn't Prime. It wasn't AWS. It wasn't anything like that. It was hiring. And that's what he credits as the most important element of building what has turned out to be one of the most valuable companies in the world. And so here's what I loved about Bezos is he understood something that most leaders miss. He said, people are drawn to high standards. They help with recruiting and retention. So think about that. He's talking about talent density here. When you set the bar high, you're not just filtering for great people, you're attracting them. A players want to work with A players. They want to be somewhere that doesn't tolerate mediocrity. And the companies that struggle to hire these, it's usually not because they can't afford them or anything like that. It's because the great people come to the door, they get through the interviews, and they look at the team and they're just like, I don't know that I want to work with them. And so that's something that a lot of us forget about when it comes to talent density and the cascading effects of that. And another approach that Bezos take, which I could not agree more with, is that he said, I would rather interview 50 people and not hire anyone than hire the wrong person. Most companies today, they won't even hire 50 people, won't even interview 50 people for a role. They're going to see 10, 15, pick the best one who applied. But Bezos was on the other side. He was just like, if none of these 50 people are exceptional, keep looking, leave the role open, because hiring the wrong person is way, way, way more expensive than leaving it unfilled. And he wasn't just talking about that. He wasn't just talking the talk. In his early days at Amazon, he spent 70% of his time recruiting. 70%. Most founders today don't spend 70% of their time on anything. It's scattered across 5, 10, 20 priorities. But Bezos had a clear vision in mind. Nothing mattered more than who he was bringing into the building to work with them. And so you're probably thinking like, okay, cool, Sam. Like, but these are once in a generation founders who built world-changing companies. Like, of course they're obsessed over hiring. But that's the point, right? They became once in a generation founders and created these world-changing companies because they obsessed over hiring. It wasn't a luxury that they did after they made it. It's how they made it. Another founder that I love, my marketing bones, David Ogilvy, the father of advertising, he put it like this. If each of us hires people who are smaller than we are, we shall become a company of dwarfs. But if each of us hires people who are bigger than we are, we shall become a company of giants. And that's a choice. Most companies are choosing dwarfs without even realizing it, because here's what happens. You hire someone who's slightly worse than you, then they hire someone who's slightly worse than them, and 3 levels down, you've got people who are nowhere near the caliber that you need. Think back to what Steve Jobs said about A players hiring B players, hiring C players. So Ogilvy, he went on to basically elaborate on this, and he said, if you ever find someone who is better than you are, hire them. If necessary, pay them more than you would pay yourself. Look for people who aim for the remarkable, not the routine. Meanwhile, most leaders feel threatened by people who are better than them. They worry it's going to make them look bad. But Ogilvy's saying that's exactly who you should be hiring. And that if they're that good, pay them whatever it takes. Because here's what happens. If you're afraid to hire people better than you, you're never going to build anything great. You're going to build a team that make you feel smart, make you feel good, but you're going to end up with mediocrity. And so here's the part that gets the most frustrating for me, because what I just described in there, that obsession over talent is near extinct today. Most business leaders that I talk to, I would love to say that they even spent 10% of their time on recruiting, but honestly, I don't think they do. I'd be lucky to get away with saying 1% to 2% of their time. They're almost always delegating it to HR. They're posting a job on LinkedIn. They're then using their founder-led content to write up their organic post and hope that pulls in the right people. They're going to screen in anyone who applies, and they're going to hire the best candidate from that pool, that little pool. And they think that's going to be good enough. But then we've got Matt Chambers, our CEO, who he said something to me one time, and it cut right to the heart of this problem. And what it was he said that sourcing is one of the most important jobs in recruitment. The traditional way of hiring, posting a job, screening the 200 people who apply, and hiring the best one, that leaves a critical question unanswered. How do you know that was the very best possible candidate? And the answer is that we don't. We only know that they were the best of the people who happened to see your job posting and happened to apply in that moment. But that's not talent strategy. That's not recruiting. That's hope. That's crossing your fingers and praying that the perfect person just stumbles across your posting at that time. The reality of it is that, and this comes back to a study that's been conducted, only about 30% of the workforce is actively looking for a job at any given time. That means that 70%, they're not even looking. They're already employed. They're already valued. They're already making an impact somewhere else. And where do you think most of those A players fall? I bet that the majority of them are in that 70%. They're not scrolling job boards. They're not looking on LinkedIn or anywhere else to try to find their next gig. they're crushing it at their current company. And I'll bet the majority of them are pretty highly valued at that. So when you flip that on its head, like most companies aren't even trying to reach them. They're just posting those jobs. They're waiting, they're praying. And then they wonder why they're not finding the great talent. So let's pick another founder, Brad Jacobs. He has built 8 different billion with a B dollar companies. He said something that stuck with me. And what it was, I laughed honestly when I read it. He said, it makes no financial sense to skimp on salary to save $50,000, $100,000 a year when hiring a second best candidate may cost you millions in profit. So think about that for a second. The $100,000 number is arbitrary. Think about any role. You might try to save a couple $1,000s. Oh, look at what we did. You know, we had a budget for $80,000 for this role. We only offered them $75,000 and they took it, but we lost that one candidate. But hey, we got this guy. What if that one person was the A player that was going to completely change things for your company, could have landed a monster client for you, could have saved your biggest customer, could have come up with your breakthrough in engineering and product, whatever that is? That's something that so many of them don't take into account. So I'm going to read that again. It makes no financial sense to skimp on salary to save $100,000 a year when hiring a second best candidate may cost you millions in lost profit. The cost of hiring the wrong person is not just their salary. It's the opportunity cost of not having the right person. It's the deals that don't close, the product that ships late or doesn't ship at all. It's the culture that degrades. It all compounds on itself. And the worst part of it is that bad hires don't just underperform, they lower the bar for everyone else. It ruins your talent density that you've been building up there. And so tolerating mediocrity, you're sending a message to your A players that mediocrity is acceptable. You're telling them working hard doesn't really matter because the person next to them who gets to coast gets to stay there too. Every day you keep that wrong hire, you're making the best people question, what the heck am I even doing here? Warren Buffett, love him. He said something about this, and what it ultimately was somebody once said that in looking for people to hire, you look for 3 qualities: integrity, intelligence, and energy. If you don't have the first, the other 2 will kill you. And that's the thing, right? Like skills can be taught, energy can be channeled, but if someone doesn't have the integrity, if they don't have the character, the archetype of someone who raises the bar for your company, you can't fix that and they will drag everyone down. And that's what keeps me up at night. I see companies hire people who check the boxes on paper. They have the right degree. They have the right experience. They have the right keywords on their resume, but they don't have that thing, that integrity, that drive, that unique archetype for that company. And that weird intensity that makes someone exceptional. And then 6 months later, the company is like, hey, why isn't that person working out? And the truth is, usually you could have known on day one if you were looking for those right things. And so if most companies are doing it wrong, what does doing it right look like? So let's walk through what some of these founders actually did, not just what they said, but what they truly did. So you got Max Levchin. He was one of the co-founders at PayPal. He said they prioritize speed over everything except one thing. Can you guess? Recruiting. They move fast on product, on strategy, on it all. But when it came to hiring, they slowed down. They only wanted A players and they would take the time to find them. So think about that. At a startup where speed is everything, you're burning cash, every day counts, they refused to compromise on talent because they understood that hiring the wrong person would slow them down way more than leaving the role open for another week, another month. Bill Gates did something similar when he was at Microsoft. He said, we were after the brightest lights. We wanted programmers when they were young and enthusiastic before they were ruined by working somewhere else. What I love about this quote is it shows Gates wasn't just hiring for their current skills, he was hiring for their trajectory, for their potential. He wanted to look for people who hadn't been beaten down yet by bureaucracy, people who still had that hunger and the creativity was just flowing through their veins. And there's a small bit in there too, is that he was saying that most companies ruin good people. They take someone that has energy, curiosity, eagerness, and it turns them into someone who just clocks in and out. Desk monkey. He just wanted to get them first. And so Paul Graham, he's over at Y Combinator, he talks about this as well. He said, could you describe the person as an animal? The people you want to hire are usually weirdly intense about their work. Someone who does what they do so well that they pass right through professional and cross into the obsessive. So I love that phrase, like crossover into the obsessive. Most companies see that as a red flag. They're just like someone who's too into their work, someone who can't stop thinking about the problem even when they're not at the office. Like, do you have work-life balance? Are you unhealthy? What's going on? But what Paul Graham's saying here is like, that's exactly who you want. Like, those are the people who will actually move the needle for you. Those are the people who want to go deep, the people who will push for excellence and keep that quality bar high. You can teach the skills. You can teach them your processes. You can teach them to care. You can teach them all of that stuff, but you can't teach this type of obsession and this desire to want to accomplish things. Either they have it or they don't. And so here's what none of these founders were optimizing for was they weren't optimizing for filling seats quickly. It wasn't about speed to hire. They weren't optimizing for checking boxes on a job description. They weren't looking to plug specific gaps. They were hiring to raise the ceiling for the entire company, to bring in the people who would make everyone around them better. Let's go over to Oracle. So Larry Ellison, he had this wild approach that shows just how seriously he took this. He told his recruiters to ask their candidates, are you the smartest person you know? And he wanted to say, if they said yes, hire them. If they said no, ask them who the smartest person they know is and go hire that person instead. So it's a bit extreme, but it shows you what he was optimizing for. He wasn't looking for someone who could just do the job. He was looking for someone who would redefine what the job could be and do it at the most elite level. And he was willing to go multiple levels deep to find that person. If you're good, but you know someone better, I don't just want you, I want that person too. Sarah Blakely, founder of Spanx, she said she would hire people purely based on vibe. She said, I've often hired by my gut and someone's vibe, and usually they were the best hires. That's probably the most fluffy sounding one of these, but what she's really saying is this, like, yes, skills matter, but energy and culture fit matter more, because if someone's super talented doesn't fit into your culture and your team, they're going to create more problems than they solve for. And she's also trusting her instincts. She's seen the archetype of what works well at her company, and she knows that that's worked because after she'd hired enough of those people, that pattern recognition for what works at Spanx worked for her. She could feel when someone had the right energy, when she knew they were going to mesh with the team, when they were going to raise the bar, when they were going to do the right thing and helping them grow. That's not something that you can put in any type of rubric. It's something that's more predictive than anything on a resume. And it's something, and this is why it's so important, goes back to the founders. They have the reps. They've been able to do that pattern recognition to understand who are the best people that are going to work here. And that's where it's this theme that keeps coming back around. Like, all these founders understood hiring, it's not a periodic activity. It's something you do. It's not just something you do when you have an opening, but you're constantly doing it. You're constantly talking to people. You're constantly watching for great talent. You're always building these different relationships, staying connected to people, and seeing, like, they might not be perfect for me right now, but I'm going to keep tabs on them because they could change our company in 3 years when we're growing or at a different stage. Sam Walton, Walmart, he used to show up unannounced at competitors' stores just to recruit their store managers. He'd see someone doing great work and go talk to them right on the spot. I don't know how many of us could get away with that today, but that's the type of level of proactivity and obsession that we're talking about here from these founders. They weren't waiting for people to apply. They were going and finding them. They were being comfortable in the uncomfort, the discomfort, and they were direct, because when you know that a person could transform your business, they were ruthless about pulling them in. All right, so what are we actually doing with this? Because I don't want to just tell you, like, hey, most founders, most company execs are doing it wrong, even though most of you listening to this know that, and you wish you could just kind of like shake them and tell them this. But I want to give you something that we can use to help them come out of this. So, rough framework. First thing we want to do is change how they think about recruiting. We need them to stop treating it like a task. We need them to start treating it like it's the core competency of building a company. Warren Buffett said his job was to attract and keep outstanding managers, not manage them, not micromanage them, to attract and keep them. That's his job. If you're a founder or a leader, recruiting should be taking up 30 to 50% of their time. I know it sounds crazy. I know that they have a million other things going on in their day-to-day, but if they're investing that time in finding the right people, everything else that they're doing is going to be much harder than it needs to be in the long run, because great people make everything else easier over the long-term time horizon. They solve problems before we know that they exist. They raise the level of everyone around them, and they attract other great people, that talent density and attraction we were talking about earlier. Meanwhile, mediocre people, as we all know, make everything harder, have to constantly manage them. They're constantly having to have their mistakes fixed and dealing with the fallout of their bad decisions. So the time that most of these leaders should be spending is investing upfront in finding those A players, because you will get 10x on the back end of it. Second item. We need them to be proactive, not reactive. You all listening know this. This is one of the most true things that we all know, but we all wonder time and time again why we're watching companies just post and pray and then complain that they aren't finding the right people. It's because we know the best candidates are not actively looking. So we can't just post jobs and wait. They have to be found. That means building a talent pipeline before they need it, identifying great people in the industry, staying in touch with them, building relationships years before a role may be available for them. This is what the great recruiters like you listening do. This is what founders like Sam Walton did. And this is what Loxo honestly was built to help companies do, to go find and engage those who aren't actively looking but could transform someone's business someday. Because if you're only fishing for those 30% who are actively looking, that's a really small pond to be in, and it's probably not a lot of fish that you want to be catching, if I'm being honest. Third item, raise your standards and be willing to wait. Let's go back to Jeff Bezos. I mean, he said he would rather leave a role open than settle because he understood that one exceptional hire compounds for years. They raise the level of everyone around them. They attract the other great people. They solve the problems that you didn't know you had as a company. The mediocre hire that's tolerated, that becomes the new standard. Good luck attracting A players when they see that that's who they're going to be working alongside. Steve Jobs, again, A players hire A players, B players hire C players. If you compromise, you hire one B player, you have started the domino effect. It is going to cascade from there. We know what's going to happen. Steve Jobs just said it ourselves. And before you know it, your entire company is full of people that wouldn't have made it past your original bar as the founder, as the owner. Fourth item, make it personal. This one's going to be a little surprising, but you can't delegate it. And I'm not saying that every leader needs to be interviewing 5,000 people like Steve Jobs did, but you should be personally involved in most every hire, because the signal that you send by being in the room matters. It tells candidates, hey, this is important. It tells your team, hey, this is important. And it ensures that you're also building the company that you want to build. You're seeing everyone that comes in and could potentially be there. Because what happens is when you delegate hiring completely, you end up with a company of people that you wouldn't have hired yourself, people who don't share your values, people who don't have the intensity that you're looking for. Because if it does get delegated sometimes, there can be a misaligned expectations there. And what happens with, I thought that you would have liked this person. Meanwhile, you didn't have a chance to vet for that yourself. So that's really hard to fix after the fact. And you can't retrofit culture into a team that was hired by someone else with entirely different standards. Fifth item is we need to be brutally honest. So remember Shackleton's ad, small wages, bitter cold, constant danger, safe return doubtful. Like, he did not sugarcoat it. He told them exactly what they were signing up for. And that's what the best people want. They don't want the polished pitch. They don't want to be sold on a fantasy. They want the truth. And honestly, they're usually energized by the big challenges, the problems, not the garbage that's put in there. And so if your company is chaotic right now, say it. If the role's going to be hard, say it. If you need someone who can come in and operate with ambiguity, say it. Most high performers, they won't say it. It's not, they don't thrive in chaos, but they like to solve problems. They like the difficult things. They don't want the same monotonous thing day in and day out and day in and day out. So what you'll get when you do this is it's actually going to work to your favor, because the wrong people will self-select out. They're going to be like, oh, I don't know, that doesn't sound like me, I'll let someone else. But the right people, they'll lean into it. So the A players, they want the meaningful work. They want to do something that matters with other people who care at the end of the day. So while we might think that the best thing to do is make the company sound perfect, actually tell people what it's really like. And the right people will be more interested in by that than those who aren't. So as I round this out, like here's the thing that I ultimately keep coming back to. Every great company in history was built by someone who understood that recruiting was not just important, it was everything. Your people aren't your most important asset. Your people are the company. Jobs knew this, Bezos knew this, Buffett, Blakely, Ogilvy, they all knew it. Yet most founders today, they spend more time on pitch decks, product roadmaps, than they do on the thing that's going to determine whether any of it works, the people executing it. So here's my challenge. Like, look at your calendar now. Go look at your clients' calendars. How much time are they spending on recruiting? Not just filling roles, but proactively building relationships with the kind of people that would transform those companies. If it's less than 25%, I'd ask them, like, what would Steve Jobs do? What would Jeff Bezos do? What would Sarah Blakely do? Because they knew something that we've forgotten. And the founder's most important job isn't strategy. It's not fundraising. It's not even product. It's hiring. Steve Jobs was literally quoted saying that. He said the founder's most important job is hiring. So, as I said, something I've been ruminating on for a while. Curious if this hit home for you? Let me know what you think. It's what we're striving for here at Loxo, helping the companies find the 1% who aren't actively looking but could change everything. Bye, y'all.